you have this kind of thought, then you are right, because biochemistry is a combination of chemistry and biology. But the truth is that basically it is a chemistry, but what type of chemistry? Now we define chemistry as a science or branch of science that deal with chemical nature of matter. Yeah, we know matter, right? In fact, we know that the history of life, you know, what existed was energy and matter. It was the energy and matter combinations that comes together to form anything we see around. So we're talking about that matter. What is the chemical nature of that matter? And when we talk about the chemical nature of the matter, we are talking about what are the constituents, what and what comes together to form this thing called matter. So in chemistry, we said we are talking about chemical nature of matter. And then to an extension, we are dealing with how does this chemical nature determine interaction or behavior when two matters come in contact with each other. So in biochemistry as well, we are talking about the chemical nature of matter, but the matter specifically in biochemistry, we are so much interested in matter that is found in biological systems. So we are dealing with the chemical nature of matter that is found in biological systems. Are we together? How does this chemical nature of matter found in biological system determine biological process or determine physiological process? How the chemical nature determines physiological process? And we mentioned that yes, the chemical nature of the matter determines physiological process or biological process through basically two approaches. Number one, it could be chemical reaction. Number two, it could be chemical interaction. How is chemical reaction? We said the two matter can come together to react with each other to form another molecule. For example, the matter A and matter B can come together to form matter C. That is a chemical reaction. So how is chemical reaction occurring in biological process or in a biological system affect physiological or biological process? Because it is a physiological or biological process to some extent that differentiate whether this thing is really living or non-living. Because if you are talking about just a chemical reaction, even chemical reaction can occur in some substances that are not living. But if chemical reaction occur in living, that chemical reaction lead to some biological processes or physiological functions or drive some physiological functions. That's basically the difference. So we said it's two. Either the chemical reaction and this chemical reaction drive the biological process or physiological process or chemical interaction. In chemical interaction, we are dealing with the two molecules or two matters, A and B, can come together without the two matters reacting to form C, but only interacting between each other. That interactions can lead to or can manifest or enhance or initiate a particular biological or physiological process. So this is basically two ways through which the chemical nature of a matter of a substances through chemical interaction or chemical reaction can influence biological or physiological process. Class, are we together? So in biochemistry, we are dealing with the chemical nature of matter found in biological system and how this chemical nature of matter through chemical interaction or chemical reaction influence biological or physiological process. Class, is that clear to you? Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Good, Martin. Yes, Diana. Okay, you guys have people responding. Okay,
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So the next thing is we're talking about chemical nature of a biological system. So if you are talking about biological system or living organism, the next question is, to what extent do chemicals constitute a living organism? Is living organism chemical in nature? Is me and you chemical in nature? The answer is yes. Because remember, I made mention that when the life exists or when the life started, there was nothing but energy and matter. And it was the energy and matter that comes together to form all what we are seeing around, including me, you, and anything you can think of. So basically, we are made up of chemical species or matter, basically. You and chair you are sitting, the phone you are using, and anything around you, they are matters. And these matters, we said, they are made of chemical species. And these chemical species were subgrouped into what we call elements. The only thing is, we know we have many elements that exist. If you can remember periodic table, I think around 118 or more. And of course, there might be many more that are yet to be discovered. But anything you see around is made up of a combination of these things. Combination of these things brought together with the help of energy. So for living organisms are also made up of those elements. It may not be all the elements. It may be a combination majorly of some elements. Like here we say our human body is made up of about 11 essential elements. Of course, you could have, or you could see quite a number or more than 11. But basically, these elements make up about 99.85% of the whole body mass of a living system, an organism, or you and me. So this element, how does this element comes together? This element comes together, we know that, from the classical chemistry classes, we know that element combine to form what? To form molecules, right? Or compounds. Joe, 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 please leave us.
I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know that my mic was on. Sorry, sir.
So these elements, like we say, they combine to form a compounds or molecules. Because we can have molecules when you have a two element of the same, maybe two elements of the same species. For example, two oxygen can come together to give oxygen molecule. Oxygen can combine with other elements like nitrogen to form nitric oxide. So when two of these elements comes together, they form what we call molecules. In biological system, these molecules, we call them biomolecules. We attach the word biomolecules to signify that this molecule is actually found in biological system. We call it biomolecules. An example of this biomolecule is the common example. There are many. We have amino acids, we have sugars like glucose and amino acids. There are many. Emanuela. Please mute yourself. Glucose, different type of sugars. Yeah, we'll come to see what is glucose. I know glucose is the most common, something you have been hearing. You know what glucose is. We now give example of glucose as a biomolecule. We have amino acids, different type of amino acid or different kind of amino acid. We come to see different kind of amino acids. Nucleotides. We'll come to know what is nucleoside. I know amino acid and glucose are very common to you. It's things we probably known. With sugars rather generally instead of glucose. They are things you, but nucleotides you don't know, but you might have known what is nucleic acid. So we'll come to know what are nucleic acid as well as nucleotides. And then fatty acid as well. They are all examples of molecules, and these are biomolecules. They are molecules that are found in biological system. So these molecules also can come together, Many of them can come together to form what we call a macromolecules. For example, when you have many amino acids comes together to form a very long or a very big molecule called macro. From the word macro means big, bigger. Okay? So many amino acids can come together to give a protein. A protein is a macromolecule. And when you talk about protein, it's a macromolecule, we know, yeah, it is a macromolecule found in biological system. We can have a lot of sugars. A lot of sugars can come together to form what we call carbohydrate. The carbohydrate is very common. It's something we know. The food we eat, the tree we see around our, so many things made up of carbohydrate. Liquids, yeah, we know liquid also, the fat and oil we use to cook contain a lot of fatty acid, and this fatty acid comes together to form what we call liquids. Another example is nucleic acid. The nucleic acid, we know that nucleic acid is a molecule that carries the genetic information found in the nucleus. We have example of DNA and RNA. So we have nucleotides as a biomolecules, and these nucleotides comes together to form a very big molecule called nucleic acid. Who is that, please? Who is that, please? Okay.
It is Lovett. Iwebe
So
Lovett, sir.
please try and nucleus it, please. So, and we said these macromolecules can also come together to give what we call supramolecules. They are bigger molecules, bigger than macromolecules. Even though in our class we will be basically discussing about these macromolecules, what are the chemical nature, the chemistry, what comes together to form these macromolecules like protein, carbohydrate, lipid, and nucleic acid will be our basic discussion in this class. But for us to understand where we are coming from, yes, of course, we know that these macromolecules comes together to form supramolecules. And these supramolecules like membrane, organelles, when they comes together, they form what we call cells. And we know what cells are. As a biologist, what you understand as living substance or something that is living, that has life, started with a cell. It started with a cell. But anything beyond cell, or after cell, or before cell, we are talking about chemical substances that on their own self, they are not living. So we have supramolecules that comes together to give cells. We say these supramolecules were made up of macromolecules. These macromolecules were made up of biomolecules, and these biomolecules were made up of elements. When you go out of chemistry, you will discover that even the elements themselves were made up of what? Electron, proton, and neutron. When you go down to physics, you'll be talking about positron, deuteron, whatever. Before you know, you enter electronic physics. Even there, when you enter electronic physics, you talked about a particle nature of matter, because they said these electrons are particles. So in physics, you will be discussing whether they are really particles or they are waves, they are light. Do they really exist as particles or they exist as light or waves? That is when you go down to a more atomistic level. But when you come up at biology level, You have cell, you know, as the smallest living substance that has life. And when you have more than one cells, they can come together to form what we call tissue. Many tissue can come together to give what we call organ. Many organs comes together to form what we call system. And many systems comes together to form what we call organism. And many organisms from at cosmos level, we say many organisms can come together to form a community. Many community can come together to form what? To form an ecosystem. The whole ecosystem itself can come together to form the universe. Are we together? This is from the cosmos level. So basically what we are trying to see here is we are trying to see the living we are seeing, or whatever we are seeing around, including the living and the non-living, we are all chemical in nature. But living organisms generally are made up of 11 essential elements, and we have seen quite a number of these essential elements, which include oxygen, which carries about 65%, carbon carries about 18%, hydrogen carried about 9.5%, nitrogen, calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, sodium, chlorine, magnesium, and others. Of course, there are others that were not mentioned here, but occur in a very, very small amount, of which these substances, if they occur in biological system at a higher concentration than needed, they may cause a problem. They could be problematic. But these ones that we are stated are the major ones. Class, are we making sense? Are we
Yes,
making
sir.
sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'll explain the concept of biochemistry. Why do we even have biochemistry? Yeah, simply because we are chemical in nature, and of course, the chemistry that is occurring in biological system is what drives physiological function. Any physiological function you see around, anything you see, I've given an example of physiological function drive by chemical reaction, physiological function drive by chemical interaction. I give physiological reaction drive, physiological process drive by chemical reaction is, I give example of muscle contraction and relaxation. And just imagine yourself without muscle contraction and relaxation. If your muscles cannot contract and relax, what can you do in this life? In fact, you can't do anything. You'll just be bedridden. In fact, even breathe, in fact, you can't even be bedridden. You can't be alive. Why? Because even the breathing process is not possible. Because the breathing process involves the inhalation and exhalation. And this inhalation and exhalation is as a result of contraction and relaxations of lung itself. What drives contraction and relaxation of any smooth or skeletal muscle is due to what I explained as the gliding movement between actin and myosin. Yes, of course, you will know what actin and myosin are when you come to discuss anatomy. But how does
October,
this,
180,000.
please, how does this gliding movement made possible? The gliding movement between actin and myosin that drive contraction and relaxation of muscles are actually made possible due to a hydrolysis of ATP. ATP is a chemical molecule. So hydrolysis drives this contraction and relaxation of muscles. And that leads to contraction and relaxation of muscles, which drive quite a number of physiological processes. Excuse me, please. Yes, sir. Yes, it does.
Sorry, as the tutor is talking to someone, can we please mute our mics? Please,
Yes,
let's
ma'am.
mute our mics.
Thank you.
I'm telling you, people are causing nuisance. Mute your mics, please.
Please mute your mic. Mute your mic, please. Okay. So, like I said, we have now example of a chemical reaction driving contraction and relaxation. And just imagine yourself, any living system that cannot undergo contraction and relaxation of skeletal and smooth muscles. You can't do anything. You can't be alive. And including, I give example also of the heartbeat itself, because the heartbeat also involves contraction and relaxation. And these things are made possible through this hydrolysis, which is generally chemical reaction. Without this chemical reaction, this hydrolysis, there won't be something like this. There won't be contraction and relaxation, meaning a life can cease to exist. So also you will see a lot of chemical reactions in biological system. If they cease to exist, the whole life itself will stop to exist. I give another example of chemical nature that occur through interaction, where I said you will talk about in pharmacology. I know you will be doing a course in pharmacology, or even in physiology, you will be talking about hormones, and these hormones will bind to a receptor and lead to signaling, or cause some signaling, or causes some responses. How the hormone bind to the receptor, if two matters comes together. There is no chemical reaction. There is no formation of new substance. But that coming together trigger some physiological activities. Is that clear? So this is basically how chemical nature drive physiological process. Now, the next thing we'll talk about is branches of biochemistry. Like we say, we will be discussing physically or medical biochemistry, or this course is basically medical biochemistry, but even though at this stage, we are talking about the chemistry. So in chemistry, we may not talk more about the medical aspect, because the medical aspect comes under metabolism, the sister of this course. But here is to understand the chemistry of those molecules that are found in biological system. In the next course, which is the senior brother of this course, you will learn how these molecules are involved in the chemical reactions and how these chemical reactions can be linked to quite a number of medical issues or processes or biochemical reactions that are linked to quite a number of medical processes or medical significance. So biochemistry, like we said, is very extensive and it has a lot of branches. But this one we're just brought here to mention a few of them. One of them is natural product chemistry. Natural product chemistry, we are dealing with plant secondary metabolites. This plant secondary metabolite produce some compounds that have some biological activities. And these compounds has been used even in development of medicine, development of drugs that can be used to take care of some particular disease condition. Another one is enzymology. In enzymology, because we are talking about chemical reaction in biological system, yes, of course, we know that from the basic understanding of chemical reaction, chemical reaction occur between two molecules, A and B. This reaction is made possible sometimes by the action of a catalyst, another thing that will come together to make the reaction between A and B possible. So in biological system, also the same thing. You can have A and B reacting, but the A and B reacting is only made possible by the action of a particular molecule we call enzyme. And you know the mechanism of catalysis for hope. You can have A and B coming together, even though the A and B can react to form C, but because they do not have enough energy for the reaction to take place, you can have A and B remain in one place for a long period of time without reacting to form C. But if you lower the energy or you provide the energy with the help of catalyst or an enzyme in biological system, you can have A and B reacting within a short period of time or within a nanosecond to form C. So enzymology deal with the study of those enzymes, these things that help or that catalyze the chemical reaction or reaction between two molecules. What are those enzymes? How do they carry out their action, their catalysis? This is enzymology. The next one is toxicology. In toxicology, we are dealing with adverse effect of foreign substances in biological system. Of course, we talk about elements. 11 elements most commonly found in biological system. But there could be other substances. There are many other substances because we know there are many elements and there are many molecules that do not occur in biological system. As such, they are not regarded as biomolecules. They are molecules, but not biomolecules, not known by biological system. So if eventually these molecules find themselves in biological system, then the biological system will have to find a way of taking care of it so that it will not cause any trouble to the system. So in most cases, these molecules, some of them can be taken care of easily, while some of them can cause some problems, can trigger some challenges, can be regarded as toxics. They can be poisonous to the biological system. So most of those foreign substances, there are some foreign substances that are toxic. There are some foreign substances that even help, like drugs. Drugs are foreign substances, but the body doesn't need them. It is only taken because of some certain situations. And of course, once they enter the body tries its best to get rid of it, to get it out of the body, whether it's been drug or anything that can cause harm, anything like poison, toxins, they're all considered foreign substances, new substances to the body, things that the body doesn't know. So in toxicology, it has to do with the study of those substances that once they enter, the body doesn't know, and once they enter the body, they cause a lot of damages, a lot of adverse effect. This is what we call toxicology. The next is molecular biology. Molecular biology, we are dealing with nucleic acid.
That I heard if you don't give it or hybrid.
You don't have to leave it.
Yes, or fibroid can cause that.
Fibroid can cause
That means if you don't want finish now, fibroid, you mean fibroid, and things disturbing then.
So you are not the one teaching us. You are not the one teaching us. Okay. You are not the
What's
one
the
teaching
meaning
us.
of
You
teach
cannot mute
now?
yourself. You
Mute
cannot
yourself. Let's
mute
listen to what the tutor
yourself.
is teaching. How can you be talking about fibroid when you are in a lecture and you did not mute yourself? If you don't want to learn, allow others to learn in peace. This is becoming annoying, abeg.
All right. So in molecular biology, we are dealing with nucleic acid. Remember, I told you what nucleic acid are. Nucleic acid are those DNA and RNA that are found in the nucleus of DNA, and they contain information, genetic information. So how these nucleic acids are being manipulated to carry out or to carry out so many things, including recombinant DNA technology, including gene therapy, which we will talk about few things about them, how to manipulate the DNA and RNA to, maybe you must have heard of gene therapy, where some individuals have some defective gene, and this gene need to be manipulated, and then you have some techniques that has to do with manipulating that gene so that that individual can become normal. Like in sickle cell anemia, we know in sickle cell anemia, we are talking about problem with a gene, and how this gene is manipulated so that it will become normal is all under molecular biology. We have medical biochemistry, which we will be discussing, which will be major component of this. The application of biochemistry in disease diagnosis, disease treatment itself. How some biochemical reactions are linked to disease conditions. You will see that many disease conditions, you will see when you go in depth down at molecular level, you discover that there are some biochemical reactions that are affected. Then in pharmacological biochemistry, you are dealing with the actions of some pharmacological agents or drugs. How do these drugs act? They enter the body, they either interact with some receptors or some chemical reactions, or some substances involved in a chemical reaction, or they involve in interaction with some receptors, just as I mentioned, that this chemical interaction or chemical reaction is what modulates physiological function. So also this is what drugs do. When you take in drug, maybe drug can enter and react with something to form another thing that can lead to preventing the disease condition, or the drug can bind to a receptor through chemical interaction rather than chemical reaction to trigger some physiological process that are responsible in curing some symptoms of a particular disease. In plant biochemistry, we are dealing with chemical reactions, some biochemical process that help in that occur in plants, which facilitate the physiological process in plant that sustain the life. Then we're talking about environmental biochemistry. In environmental biochemistry, we are dealing with some biochemical reactions that affect the ecosystem, environment. There are some chemical reactions that can lead to or that can be used to combat some unwanted or toxic substances in the environment. Yes, of course, we have pollution. We have substances that can cause problem to our environment. Aisha, please, you mute yourself. Aisha, mute yourself, please. Anisha, mute yourself, please. So, like I said, in environmental biochemistry, we are dealing with some pollutants in the environment. How do we use the knowledge of biochemistry to combat these pollutants, these toxic substances, these unwanted substances in the environment to unharmful substances? This is environmental biochemistry. While in industrial biochemistry is application of biochemistry in industries. For example, in food industry, fermentation, in biotechnology, there are some substances that are known to be produced by biological system. And those substances are very important raw product in many industries. So what the industrial biochemistry do is they look at those substances. How are they produced in biological system? Or they are produced by reaction between A and B. So how can we get A and B outside the biological system and react them so that they will give C, and that C is now a raw product to produce whatever we want to produce at industrial scale. For example, citric acid. Citric acid is produced as a raw material and be used to produce so many things. For example, yogurt. The process of anaerobic respiration has shown us that yes, glucose can be converted to, that is in metabolism you discovered. Glucose is converted to pyruvate to acetyl-CoA. But under anaerobic condition, glucose can be converted to ethanol. It can be converted to lactate. And these substances can be used to produce yogurt. For example, it can be used to produce biofuel. We know fuel, the normal petrol we know, but there is one that can be used, that can be produced from all those waste substances in the environment, and they have been used as fuel in the environment. So they can also be used to produce biofuels. So all these things are biochemical processes that are being used outside in an industry to produce so many substances that has a significant importance or that help in making life easy to human beings. Then we talk about the breakthrough in biochemistry. What are some important findings that revolutionize science, understanding of life that are directly linked to biochemistry? Number one is the discovery of DNA structure. When I come across this in most of exam questions, the student will just say DNA structure or DNA or discovery of DNA by James Watson and Francis Crick in 1953. But that is not true. The discovery of DNA structure, not discovery of DNA. DNA was known before James Watson and Francis Crick, before 1953. But what John Watson and Francis Crick did is they discover the structure, how this DNA structure exists. And understanding the DNA structure is what causes some understanding of so many things in life science, in molecular biology. So what James Watson and Francis Crick did was they discovered that DNA is actually double helical structure. It is double and it is helical in structure. You have two DNA strands wrapped around each other to form a helical conformation. That is what James Watson and Francis Crick did. Then another one is CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology in 2012 by Jennifer Doudna and Emanuela Shavenka. And what they did is they developed a tool that is how in editing gene. We know DNA is a very long molecule. That very long molecule contains what we call gene. And this gene contains those informations we are talking about, that each gene contains a particular information. So if a particular gene contains a particular information, have a problem, like in sickle cell anemia, where the gene coding for the hemoglobin is having that problem. So in CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology, what these people did is they developed a technology that they can use to edit that gene, that particular gene, so that maybe where there is the problem, they can rectify the problem. Then another one is human genome sequencing in 2012. This project took about 13 years to completely know all the genes found in human beings. That is Human Genome Project in 2003. Then we have understanding on enzyme catalysis, understanding of enzymes and how enzymes carry out their functions by Marklis and Menton. How long does an enzyme need to convert a particular substrate to product is known. This is also another a breakthrough by Marklis and Menton. We have development of monoclonal antibodies by George Kohler and Cesar Mislin, and that technology has been used to produce a lot of vaccine. For example, even the most recent vaccine we've known to have been, what do you call it, the COVID-19 vaccine, which is basically an mRNA vaccine by Pfizer and Moderna. So we have vaccine technology, as I mentioned. And then how these things are relevant to microbiology. In microbiology, they are linked to biochemical pathways that explain some microbial metabolism, growth, and survival. And if you understand the chemical reactions occurring in a biological or a microorganism, you should know that if you want to kill this microorganism, how can you stop this chemical reaction that occur, particularly in this bacteria? And if you kill or you stop that reaction, the bacteria will die. Botany and plant science, in understanding photosynthesis, how plants absorb or make use of carbon dioxide, convert it to